All right, welcome back to the Amato Report. Joining me at this time is someone I used to interview frequently back in the day over at One American News. First time she has joined me since. She is currently now a new position, the editor at large over at the Washington Times. And she moderated a panel just now getting back from CPAC. Let's welcome Alex Swoyer. Alex, good to see you.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. And I think actually you may have been my first ever TV interview. So thank you so much. It's been fun, many years ongoing, and it's good to be with you again.
Yes, it is. And I'm not, Alex, what's interesting about me hearing you say that is there are probably about 10, 15, 20 people that I see on Fox and Fox Business who tell me to this day, yeah, you were the first person who interviewed me on national TV.
Yes, it was good. Good training. Thank you.
Now let me mention you just returned to the DC area from Houston,
CPAC, that's right.
from CPAC in the Dallas area. You have COVID, huh?
I do, yes. So over the weekend, once I got back, I wasn't feeling good and I got tested and it came out positive, which was crazy because it's the first time I've ever had COVID. And I thought after 6 years that I might have been immune from it. I didn't know how that happens, but here I am. And I'll tell you what, it knocked me out off my feet for the first 24, 48 hours.
Wow. Well, I'm sorry to hear that, and I really appreciate you going through this moment in time and
Of
being with
course. Yes, thank
us.
you.
How was CPAC? You moderated a panel. Tell us about the panel which you moderated to begin with.
Yeah, so I moderated a panel on fentanyl overdoses, and I talked to two moms who have lost their children to the fentanyl crisis. And also, drug czar Sarah Carter was part of the panel. It was interesting to hear their takes. The moms spoke a little bit about prevention methods and the need to really talk to your teens about what to do when exposed to fentanyl. One of the mothers was basically saying if you know your teen or anyone was exposed to it, to take them immediately to rehab, that it's not like a one-time thing, that it's that addictive, that they need to go to an actual specialty center right away. And then Sarah Carter, it was very interesting talking to her. The moms talked about, a lot about the drug boats and what we've seen happening with the administration taking drug boats out from the cartel. And that was something that Sarah Carter said has really dented the supply into the US, which is great. And I'm actually going to be interviewing her in more detail later this week for the Washington Times about not only what's happening with the supply coming into the country, but what also they're doing to combat or like have prevention methods, like what types of rehab facilities or training or programs are best for different age groups was one of the questions I've asked them to come prepared to talk about. Different things that are, us as Americans and our neighbors that we can kind of give each other information to help one another to try to combat this too once someone is addicted.
Wow, that sounds great that you're doing that, Alex. And tell Sarah I said hello. As we just mentioned, you and I used to be on One American News where I interviewed you. Prior to One American News, I interviewed Sarah on a regular basis on San Diego radio. So
Yeah, she's great. I think she's from that area too, right? I think that's where
yeah,
she's originally from.
she's from Southern California. You're right. Uh, Now, how was, of course, you were focused on on the panel which you moderated. It sounded like a great topic that you handled. Not didn't sound it was a great topic. Uh, President Trump chose not to attend. What was your take on CPAC overall?
So my understanding was that the schedule was very much fluid. They weren't sure if he was going to come or not. I mean, leading up to traveling out to CPAC, I was talking to the Schlaps, and I think that they were, possibly trying to make it work. But there was at the time, if you recall, he was supposed to travel to China, also. Given the Iran war, that trip was postponed. I now think it's in May. They announced that today that it'll be like May 13th to 15th, I believe. So there was that aspect. And then, of course, the idea of having the president deliver a CPAC type speech during the Iran crisis, I think, was also a hurdle that comms people in DC, probably the White House, were also dealing with, like, not just logistic scheduling, but also what his responsibilities here right now.
So it was a more complicated situation than the media presented it as.
That's my understanding.
Um, you're covering the mail-in ballot case with the Supreme Court.
Yeah,
Uh,
so I wanted to talk a little bit about that because I think this is such a big case that it was argued last week and it's going to have major ramifications. And I don't know if it's gotten as much coverage as it deserves. There's a case, I don't know how much you and your listeners have followed it, but basically, there's out of Mississippi, they allow mail in ballots to be counted 5 days past Election Day. Washington State, 21 days. Illinois, 14 days. So this case now is basically arguing there's one election day and that these state laws, specifically Mississippi is before the court, are unconstitutional based on the idea that there should be one federal election day.
hmm.
Should the justices rule against these challengers, it would strike down Mississippi's law that allows like the 5 day post-election day count, and it would also impact other states that allow this ongoing, which we saw in 2020, really drag out the counting of ballots, several days, weeks past election day. So I think it's a major one. I kind of jotted down where I think the justices are going to fall, and it's going to be, I think, up to Justice Barrett and Chief Justice Roberts to be the deciding factors in this one. But the majority of the GOP justices, I thought, were on the side of the challengers, basically saying, like, there does seem to be some way that we need to rein in the election laws here. The question then became, well, what's next? What about early voting? What did the founders think about something like that? So it was an interesting case, and I think it could have major ramifications, and a decision will be coming out in June.
Do you care to pull out a crystal ball and give us a guess of where you think this goes?
I think that it does sound, I have Thomas, Alito, Gorsuch, and Kavanaugh all pretty much sounded like that they think that this ongoing count is contrary to what the founders envisioned. And so in my understanding, there was some questions too from Barrett that seemed to suggest that as well. So that would put the majority then ruling against Mississippi's law that allows the 5 days past election day. The question, I think, is how broad they go versus making it narrow, because are they going to then impact other laws, like I mentioned, early voting. I think that was a question. So it's going to be one to watch, but I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see mail-in ballots being reined in.
Interesting. Okay. Birthright citizenship. This is a topic and a story issue that you're covering.
Yes.
Give us
So,
an
and yeah. So, another major case this month is in 2 days, Wednesday. The Supreme Court will be hearing arguments over birthright citizenship. And so a lot of people have followed the President Trump and his immigration stance and wanted to end birthright citizenship. It's basically where someone who is born of parents here in America who are not citizens then becomes a U.S. citizen. And there's pregnant women and immigrant rights groups that have challenged the president's executive order that ended birthright citizenship. And at issue is the 14th Amendment. There's what's called the Citizenship Clause, and it's the one that reads about being, quote, subject to the jurisdiction thereof. And basically, that's what people have used to argue, well, someone born here is therefore a citizen. And so the president's legal team, the Solicitor General, if they're going to argue going back to the 14th Amendment, that was really targeted to the recently freed slaves, that was giving them citizenship, and that was narrowly tailored.
Hmm.
If you go back and look at the debate at the time, my editor, Stephen Dinan, one of the great political editors at the Washington Times, he did a deep dive into this. And there was actually talk about excluding Chinese people from the citizenship clause at the time, Native Americans. So it wasn't as broad as has been interpreted today. Now, there was an 1898 ruling in, it's called the Wong Kim Ark case, and it basically was a Chinese man, a son, who was born of two Chinese individuals who were here legally but did not have citizenship. And the court did rule that he was then given citizenship because he was born here of these two individuals. So that's what the other side has pointed to say there is precedent for birthright citizenship. So it'll be interesting to see where the court comes down. If they say, well, here's a distinction, they were here legally, we can limit it to people who are here illegally and say that that doesn't qualify. I think it's something that it's really going to be an interesting decision once it is issued later this summer. Usually by the end of June is when we get all of our decisions, because we've seen this become really like an industry. People come here, wealthy citizens from Russia, China, to exploit these laws.
Wow. Wow. Well, I tell you, you did a great job, Alex, of explaining that and going into details. I think most Americans aren't familiar with the intricacies of that whole issue. Alex Sawyer, we really thank you for joining us. Any final comments?
Well, I'd love to come back when some of these decisions are down.
Yeah, let's bring you back. We'd like to have you back on a regular basis, Alex, and uh,
Thank you.
and get healthy with that COVID.
Thank you so much.
Back with more after this.